1 in 2 American women are obese. And it's like we're normalizing it. Why are we normalizing it and then calling it empowerment?
It's not just statistic staggering, obviously, but it's also that the narrative around women and dieting and how to be healthy is completely backwards.
The American public is really a test ground for this medication, and we're permitting it, we're allowing it. And what do you think this says about us, like from a larger context?
I think it's the opposite of Make America Healthy Again.
We noticed that 79.2% of you are not subscribed. So if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Come subscribe. We give you 5 days a week of free weight loss advice. And I mean, come on. It's a pretty cool vibe over here. So I'd love it if you'd come join. We really appreciate all of your support. So please don't forget to subscribe.
Well, we're so happy to be here today. We have an honored guest, Emma Post. She is a health and wellness advocate, and she is also the press secretary of MAHA, a very important position right now, I believe. Yes, and so we are so honored to have you here today and to learn about what drove you to be a health and wellness advocate and to hear more about your passion and your vision and your understanding of like what's happening right now in the world.
Well, thank you so much for having me, you guys. This is really beautiful, and I'm just so excited to dive in. So, yeah.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with her story about,
I want to know your story.
Sure. I'm like, how far back should I go? So I would say, we were talking about earlier, I started out, I grew up in the Midwest, went to college on the East Coast, and then ended up in DC as soon as I graduated, working up on Capitol Hill as a press secretary for a senator. And that was 20 years ago, which is crazy. I'm aging myself. But, just always kind of had that desire to change the world in some way. And for me, storytelling and press and how you convey these narratives and to the rest of the world has just been a passion of mine. So after DC, I actually ended up leaving. I just was disenchanted at the time. I felt like it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then ended up in New York for about 10 years. Had a pretty, honestly, stressful job. I think on the one hand, I was managing director at a big corporate PR firm where we did communications for Fortune 500 companies and entire industries. So looking at how do you use a narrative to impact policy and move policy at the national and state level, doing that for different industries, and honestly just got so burnt out. And I think that that's partly what led me to come to LA, because I was just like, there has to be something that is more healthy for my, my life, my spiritual, mental, physical health. So that was about 10 years ago. And I think that that's when I really started to embark in kind of all the different health and wellness modalities. I would say, honestly, I probably had some level of PTSD coming out of New York because I had a situation in work with a Me Too moment with the CEO, which, we don't need to get into, but yeah, it was a lot. So, I think we all have these moments where it's what is all of this success and money and, stress on paper? This is not getting me anywhere. I need to make a decision that is good for me. So came to LA about 10 years ago, have worked in various health and wellness startups and brands, doing communications, PR, community building for places like Dosist, Summit Series, TED. I'm sure you guys probably have heard of some of those. And yeah, I guess I ended up going to one of Bobby's fundraisers probably about a year ago. That was down in Austin, Texas. I had a couple of friends who were there playing music and participating, and I was like, cool, I want to check this out, why not? And it looked more like, honestly, a wellness event than a presidential fundraiser. Yeah. So I was like, cool, I'm in. And that was when, I heard now Secretary Kennedy talk about chronic disease for the first time in a way that was just so real and honest and raw. And in a way that, it was fearless, as you guys, know. I mean, it was so honest in this way that I hadn't really seen from someone who was a politician before, especially in that kind of setting where I was surrounded by my friends from different brands in LA and artists, and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And so I connected with our then chief of staff, Bridget, who you guys know as well. And we just kind of hit it off. I think she like came up to me because of the pair of pants I was wearing. And like, I love, fashion as well. And just kind of hit it off, stayed in touch, and ended up joining the campaign as national college director. Yeah, I guess this was all probably about a year ago. And then obviously, stayed on the campaign through his suspension of the campaign and endorsing Trump. And we can dive into that more if we want. As you can imagine, it was quite the experience navigating all of that.
I bet.
And then, but it all turned out, I think we all had our, spiritual come to Jesus moment around that. And, we all talk about it very openly. Yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
And just stayed on, with the team, Del and Bridget. Their directive was sort of to start the super PAC to really help bring the Kennedy vote to Trump. And they started that. And a couple weeks later, Bridget called me and said, hey, like, we need press. Like, will you come on the team? And, again, and she knows this too. It's like, all these moments you sort of have to really examine. I mean, I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know, if I could go full on super PAC world. Like, this is intimidating.
But in this way, you've been preparing your whole life for it.
Exactly.
It sounds like
it's true. So,
and your passion.
Yes.
And DC wasn't going to cut it. So
it's true.
This is even more perfect.
It is really perfect. People say like, how did you end up in this role? And it's like, a year ago, this role didn't even exist, right? Like MAHA as a concept, the way we think about it now has been like burgeoning for decades, but it wasn't what it is now. And so, I'm like, there's no quote unquote like manifestation of this. For me, it was just this true like unfolding and really, really allowing myself to be with the process and be present to what was happening. Every time I sort of felt like I was pushed maybe beyond my comfort zone, where like I remember the first time Bridget said, do you want to come to a Trump rally in Vegas? And I was like, let me get back to you. And then I was like, okay, like, and I think that was something like actually that really valuable that I've learned throughout this whole process is that there are these moments where maybe we let our own fear sort of throw up this blockade and challenge us, right? But I have found through this whole process that those moments where I actually said, okay, like, I'm going to go, it's going to be okay. Like, my team is going to be there. Like, let's just see how this goes. And it ends up being incredibly valuable and rewarding and fine, Right. So I call it like lighting a candle in the dark. Like, there are these places where you think you just can't go and it turns out you can.
That's amazing. And that's a great message for our listeners, because this is applying to career in this case and life purpose. This could also apply to your health. And it's always about these uncomfortable moments, I think, in which we grow.
100%.
Those are the growth opportunities. And if we're just living in our comfort zone, I don't know that we're actually growing at the extent at which we're capable.
100%. And I think as a culture and society, I mean, if we look at just the example of politics, like, we're so quick to sort of say, they're a Democrat, or, mainstream media is against us or whatever. And again, like, we've had so many moments where I think you extend a hand to someone, like in this example, I'll just say the New York Times, and, you take the time to cultivate a relationship and again, go past your comfort zone, and turns out like things turn out okay. Not only that, they'll like end up writing a great story. And again, it's like the narrative around us does not always reflect, I think, the true reality of the heart of these situations. Which is,
the truth is the truth is the truth. And you can't deny the truth. And the truth of health lies, I believe, in nature and the body's ability to restore itself naturally if you give it the environment to do so. And our medical system has gotten so far away from that. And I think that moms know that, reporters know that, people know that, because people are dumb. I mean, we can make them dumb with big pharma and big food. I get that. And with like miseducation, which is, I believe, part of what we're experiencing right now. But honestly, I don't think that we're dumb deep down inside, and the truth is the truth is the truth. And that's why I think we'll probably keep getting so surprised because the narrative has been different than it is now. And for those of you who don't know, the MAHA movement is Make America Healthy Again movement. And maybe you haven't been watching the news or you just didn't know. It's a really powerful opportunity for us to find real solutions to make America healthy again, because it's never been more expensive to be healthy. We spend so much money on healthcare in this country that it's ridiculous, especially when you look at the kind of health outcomes that we're creating. And so this is a huge team that's emerging and collecting people and creating this wave. I don't think it's crested yet, but it's definitely swelling.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think that's the beauty of it. Like I said, obviously this is something that, has been years in the making. There are moms, families who have been fighting for these issues around clean health, clean food or vaccine choice for years. And I think we really recognize and honor that. And those are the people that really helped to build Secretary Kennedy's base, right?
Yeah.
And then once he, supported Trump, those were the people I think we all know ended up having a pretty big impact on the outcome of the election, and still do in terms of supporting and driving this movement. I mean, I think it's really unprecedented to have a member of the cabinet come in with like an entire movement behind him, and the idealistic part of me thinks, oh my gosh, like what is the potential of this, if we can really marry up, the power of people and families and moms and daughters like you guys to, with government and policy.
Top down, bottom up.
Yeah.
Feeling the squeeze.
Yeah.
It'll be like that, like, with the birth of a galaxy is kind of like that, how just like,
I think so. I hope so. I mean, I think that's why already you see these policies coming out around things like, clean baby formula and things that it's that marriage of culture and policy that makes it really relevant, right? It's like before, I'm like, can I say this? Like, I didn't know what was like happening at HHS prior administrations.
True.
I don't think that they were really for me, it wasn't hitting my radar in terms of relevancy.
Right.
I'll say that.
Because it felt so far away from the reality that I was living in. And, when Penelope was 320 pounds, they were throwing at her medication. They were throwing all kinds, medication for anxiety, medication for her depression, medication. You weren't offered weight loss medication at that time.
No, but I remember so vividly. I was in, what was it, like second or third grade, and the little doctor or nurse came around and gave all the kids ADHD medication.
Oh my God.
And then for lunch, they served us like packaged Oreos and Lay's chips and pizza. There was like no vegetable in sight. For my whole time in school, public or private, neither one had healthy options really at all.
Well, they had a salad bar. People weren't interested in it.
Nobody went to the salad bar. And that's not the first thing people were picking up. That wasn't the first thing you would see walking in.
Right.
Just so fascinating. And as kids, we don't think about it because we're not taught about it in school. So as kids, we're just like, okay. And then we're all getting so fat and we don't even know why.
Of course.
And then, you're a teenager and then you're getting bullied, or maybe you're not, or body positivity, all these things. It's really confusing for young people.
It is confusing for young people, and I think it's young people that are going to change it ultimately, and that's why I'm so eager to get policy passed for mandatory nutrition education in elementary schools, and maybe even garden projects. That would be like my dream come true.
Yeah.
But this idea of kids not knowing what to choose, I mean, you were actually taught, because I would train you, but then you would rebel. You were like, yeah, right, Mom, that's not happening.
That's true.
Because then you wouldn't be cool. It's a cultural shift that moms need to partner on, because it was funny. We were just talking to some friends. They're like, yeah, but I'm not going to fight that battle. I'm not going to advocate for cleaner snacks at play dates and birthday parties, because I don't want to be that mom. And I'm like, wow, why not? Be that mom. Like, you could save your kid's life. I had no idea Penelope was going to become such an addict where she would beg, borrow, and steal, literally, to get her processed food. And it wasn't until COVID hit that she didn't have her supply that she turned things around.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is so addictive. And I don't want the government telling people what they can and can't eat. I don't think that's right. But at the same rate, until we get a system that is rewarding health instead of, like a sick care system, until we reform that and we reform our education for our medical doctors and our children, I don't know how else we're going to be able to do it. Although in Sweden and Norway, they make junk food expensive and hard to get.
Oh, smart.
So, I mean, that's one solution.
Yeah.
Don't make it as cheap and easy to find.
Yeah.
And then you start making people think creatively about other options. But I think nutrition is just such a huge gap. And I think that's what I realized. I don't know if you know this, but my mom died
Oh, wow.
with severe obesity on her death certificate
Oh, wow.
because she was morbidly obese my whole life. So I grew up like in an eating disordered household.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. But I mean, I think we're all being given these as gifts.
Oh, yeah.
Like your
100%,
breakdown led to
100%.
you getting curious about health, which had Kennedy's message resonate with you.
True.
And then it was like, and here you are living your purpose. It's just, that yes,
Yeah.
it was interesting to grow up in that, but I understand the complexity of obesity.
100%.
And now 1 in 2 American women are obese. And it's like we're normalizing it. Like, why are we normalizing it and then calling it empowerment?
Oh my gosh, so much good stuff to unpack here. I'm like, first of all, I can't believe you were 320 pounds. We have to talk more about this. But yes, and another thing I've been thinking about a lot is it's not just the fact that, yes, that statistic is staggering, obviously, but it's also that we think the narrative around women and dieting and how to be healthy is completely, I don't want to swear, but it is completely backwards, right? Like for me, I'm 41. I grew up my whole life thinking like, okay, we're supposed to be skinny. There's like this invisible salad lobby that just like comes into like, your ether and you're like, this is how I'm supposed to eat. Your mindset is it's around lack. It's about, not how can I not eat less to like look good. Whereas my journey really the past year, once I turned 40, is like I started strength training really seriously, 3-4 times a week. And it's been so transformative. We could talk about like kind of all the benefits of that. But the other thing that it has done is mentally has helped shift my mindset where I don't know if you guys have heard of Dr. Gabrielle Lyons.
Yes, of
Amazing.
course. Yeah,
this,
she's such
like,
an inspiration.
She's
We
so
love
amazing.
her.
This
Yeah.
whole idea of like, the problem isn't that we're, too fat. It's that we're under muscled, which is such a mindset shift and so much more empowering if you start to think about your body as having this like powerhouse of skeletal muscle in your body that you can develop, that if you really train and if you eat properly and get the right amount of dietary protein, you can become smaller while you get stronger. And that is such a better, more empowering and real narrative than I need to eat salads so that I can be skinny, and that's kind of been my journey over the past, I think we all as women, you go through your whole life and who hasn't like been on like some crazy like yo-yo dieting moment?
I don't know any woman that hasn't.
Yeah.
I don't think your dad ever has because he's just naturally slim.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, well, actually, there are some people who are naturally slim.
That's true.
And I've always
That's
been
true.
like, what? I don't get it. I can't wrap my head around it. I mean, are you naturally slim?
I mean, I'm pretty naturally skinny, but like in New York, I like drank and like, I was bigger. Like I was definitely like, I don't want to say bigger. I was like a size 6, now I'm like a 0 or a 2. But again,
That's a big difference.
That is a big difference.
Probably 30, 40 pound difference.
That is a big difference. Which,
Have you ever struggled with body image?
yeah,
Like,
for
back then?
sure. For sure. Absolutely.
And how has this new like mindset had changed you?
I think what this mindset has shown me is that, well, first of all, I feel my best. I feel my strongest. There is nothing like pushing yourself at the gym like this and really feeling like your muscle strength and understanding that you can go further than what you think. And I think that honestly, the timing is so interesting of like me starting to strength train about a year ago and then going through all of this work, politically, because it just, I mean, you guys probably know, it's like you take care of that, you take care of your physical health, then, it cascades. There's an impact on your mental health and your emotional health and your ability to be strong and navigate all the other crazy situations that life throws at you. And so, it's been really transformational. And so I think that's something I'm just like so passionate about that I want women to know is like, we need to be, this is about our health. It's about strengthening ourselves so that we have, having a strong muscular system is the best defense against these chronic diseases, right?
I
But
agree.
we're not taught that any of that.
It's
Like,
true. It's true. Like we burn more efficiently.
Yeah.
Our metabolism works better. Our mitochondria is functioning at a more optimal level.
Yep.
And of course, there's balance to it all.
Yeah, of course.
When Penelope first started her weight loss journey, one of her big breakthroughs, outside of just sitting at the table and eating together, that was something she wouldn't do for years.
I wouldn't eat at the table with her.
Despite that, I was a master chef and I'm like a gourmet chef.
Yeah.
And
I just rebelled so hard. I was like so addicted to my junk food that I like hid it under my bed. I hid it in the closet, and I would lock myself in my room and eat all night, like away from her. And then in front of her, I would never eat. So to her, I was just not eating,
oh my God.
but I was getting so fat.
And then her next breakthrough was going to the gym. We had an amazing friend who just encouraged her. I'm so grateful for Lauren for that. And she was in the gym, and so she was lifting heavy. And that's really how this whole thing started. It like lit an engine in her because it was like she needed it mentally and emotionally. Something to push against, to push through,
Yep.
to come up against that could meet her intensity. And I look at exercise for myself as a emotional regulation tool, and we actually position it in our program as such. And all of the narrative and the cueing in the classes that I teach are all about that.
Yep.
And it is such a powerful tool. Now, I've learned thousands of methodologies as a like master level trained professional ontological coach, but honestly, exercise is way faster, way more efficient. And like, you know, as a woman, like we need to get it done, you know, in an hour or even 25. You can do a lot. You can burn out a muscle group in 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and if you focus on 5 muscle groups a day, it's not a huge commitment, as long as you know what to do. You know, and then you got to change it up.
But again, this is where the narrative is so important, right? Because like for me growing up, like if you told me then that I would be like strength training, like all I knew when I was growing up was like, you see like this whole like strength training, like building muscle, it's kind of hijacked by like big guys at the gym.
Right.
And like, you know, it's like as a woman, you don't get the message that this is something that's really, really impactful for your health and longevity until, I don't know, until maybe you're my age. I always worked out. I did Pilates and yoga and all these things. I've always been active, but it wasn't until, you know, the past couple years where I really realized the impact that this kind of work can have. So, you know, yeah.
What you just like you can climb any mountain, you can like lift anything.
Yeah.
You can just do whatever you want. The freedom of that, is that one of the things?
I think so. And I think the way that like if you listen, I'm not gonna like become a bodybuilder, don't worry. But it's very interesting the way that serious strength training kind of like cascades and has an impact on the rest of your life, because once you are getting serious about that, you're like, okay, I actually really need to be mindful of my protein intake, of my supplements, of my sleep, you know, so it sort of like impacts everything else in this really positive way. You guys have probably been seeing my Instagram lately. Like I was realizing through this in-body scan that like I have not been getting enough protein despite all this work. Like I haven't been, because again, this is another narrative issue where it's like, for me, people would tell me eat more protein and I'm like, I don't want to get big, you know? Like I think that's maybe
That's a narrative for sure.
it totally, you know? And so
We
know,
definitely bulk up. We have the body type, Penelope and I, that bulk up, and we could easily be bodybuilders, and it doesn't take much. So I definitely lift weight, and I do a lot of body resistance, but I mean, and I do some heavy weights, and I do love the way it makes me feel. But I do worry. I worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually such a powerful message of Dr. Lyons, right? She says like, there's literally like, you cannot get fat off of the right amount of protein, you know, around the
Well, I
right
mean about
size
lifting
hair.
heavy weights.
Oh, lifting heavy. Yeah.
That's
That's another,
That's
totally.
something, because my thighs start to get like really bulky, and I'm like, I don't really want to look like that
Yeah,
because I don't
that's
feel
true.
feminine. But I think you do have different types of body constitutions. I don't know if that's true, but that's been my experience. That there are some people who are predisposed in their genetic lineage, and I don't believe we're a victim to our genes, but I do think there is some predisposition to it.
Yeah.
And it's like now they're calling it, I couldn't believe this the other day, they're creating a whole new narrative around obesity. And they're calling it adipose dominant. So that if you're adipose dominant, adipose means fat.
Okay.
If you're fat dominant, which means like 1 in 2 American women are adipose dominant, then you're eligible for weight loss medication, because they're really pushing weight loss medication. And I'm concerned about that as a mindset for our culture, because not only does it decrease skeletal muscle, by like 40%. There are a cascade of side effects that we don't even know about. The American public is really a test ground for this medication, and we're permitting it, we're allowing it. And what do you think this says about us, like from a larger context?
I mean, I think it's the opposite of Make America Healthy Again. You know, I totally agree with you. And it's funny, I was just on a website that's all about women's wellness and hormonal health and balance and all of these things. And I was considering, getting like my biomarkers checked with them. And I went to the section that said obesity, because I was just curious, or no, it said weight management. And I like clicked. And the first thing they recommended on there, they said, if you're struggling with weight loss, we can work with you on a number of these GLP-1s as the first thing on their website.
That's their first line of defense.
And I was like, I cannot believe that this is the first thing that we are offering people instead of some kind of language around dietary or lifestyle, intervention or all of these different things. So, and to your point as well, like these are things that once you get on it, like they want you on that for life, right?
Yes, that's the only way. Once you go off, you'll gain it back. 80% of people.
And 77% gain more weight after.
Right. And it just encourages this like sedentary lifestyle where, you're not motivated to, again, all the things that we're talking about that are good for strengthening your longevity and your metabolic health and all of this stuff. This is literally the opposite. So I'm like, I feel really passionately, and it like breaks my heart, honestly. It's not that hard, to go out there and, make an effort. You don't have to have a trainer. You don't have to be so into it, but just to make the effort to, there's a million online courses and trainers that you can, apps that you can download to do this and take care of yourself before, we're saying, hey, go on Ozempic.
Have you read The Magic Pill?
No.
By Johan Nori. So he's a lab rat for himself, and in COVID he got really obese, and he went to a party and everyone was really slim, and he was like, oh, everyone must have lost weight during COVID. And they were all like, no, we just took the Ozempic. He's like, oh, I want that. So he took that. He had a binge eating disorder his whole life. He always went to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he admits in the book and on all these podcasts that he goes to KFC, he gets the same bucket of chicken, he just eats less. He doesn't do anything different, but he's down 40 pounds. But think about all the muscle he's lost.
Yeah.
And he admits that. And he's like, look, a lot of people are in this situation. And we know that the food is so addictive. So we know that a lot of people are in that position. Most people don't follow up with their doctors. They're not working out like you're saying. And it is promoting more sedentary lifestyle.
I would love to see eligibility for these medications if and when they're administered, that they have to go through a rigorous process of first trying. Because I would disagree that it's easy, only because I grew up with a mother who was a compulsive eater.
Okay.
Well, we would say it's simple, right?
Simple,
It's
that's a better
embarrassingly
word.
simple.
Yeah,
And
simple is a
but
better
like
word.
facing your demons and beating an addiction is like beating a demon off your back.
Sure.
I mean, it's really challenging. And I witnessed also Penelope firsthand, and my mother throughout my entire life now, just wrestle with this inner, they call it food noise now, but like just this obsessive, fixation on food. And some people might say, well, that's a predisposition genetically. And I would disagree with that. I think you can beat those genes. I think I'm an example of that. You're an example of that. My sister's an example of that. So I think it's possible. But I do think that we need support and we need a system. Like, I feel like doctors' hands are tied.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the doctors are doing the best they can. And for them, it's a godsend that they have a medication like this, because they can't prescribe lifestyle medicine. Yeah. Their business model doesn't support lifestyle medicine. Right. They're also not trained in nutrition. So they're completely unqualified to help their patients. So in a way, it's like this reformation really needs to come from the top down, where insurance companies absolutely need to get involved with education and accountability partners. But what's so interesting is that there are literally hundreds of thousands of health coaches that have been trained that don't really have viable job opportunities because there is no insurance coverage.
Right.
They'll pay for Ozempic now. 3 months, within 3 months, you get to your optimal dose and you maintain that dose, they will pay for it. If you're not at the optimal dose, then they won't pay for it. And they won't even pay for a nutritionist. Well, they will. $25 generally towards a nutritionist 3 times. So look at that. Like, if a person who pays $10,000 or more a year for their insurance, how are they supposed to choose? I mean, they're in a corner.
Sure.
And then they're saying, oh, well, this drug it makes you not addicted anymore. So it's the cure for alcoholism and drug addiction and all these things. And so
But then they don't talk about the suicide or the people who are dying in the UK.
Or
They
the-
don't talk about why Novo Nordisk, where it's created, nobody's on the drug.
or the gut motility issues, or the thyroid cancer, black box
C-cell
warning,
tumor, yeah.
or the permanent gut dysbiosis that it causes. I mean, if anyone knows anything about the gut microbiome, you do not want that. You don't want to invite that into your life. We've been struggling to repair that forever. I mean, 30 plus years for me.
So what do you know anyone on Ozempic right now? Do you like have people in your circle?
I do, for sure.
And
for
do you
sure.
like, what do you say to them? Do you talk about it? Do you avoid it?
Listen, I think I am a big proponent of like your body, your choice.
Okay.
And I do think that like I have, to your point, like I have read about people who have like specific medical conditions and it's very difficult for them to lose weight. And so this ends up being helpful. You know, there has to be a way where like, there just has to be a way where, like you said, like it can't be the first resort.
Right.
There has to be better education around it, especially the long tail. And like I said, my main concern is just the overall impact on your lifestyle, because then you're setting yourself up to be unhealthy sort of in perpetuity without any motivation to
Oh, that's so scary.
I can't imagine being like a fat 12-year-old, because I was, and then having
was
the
I.
doctor be like, okay, we're going to inject you now, and you just inject yourself every week. As a 12-year-old, that seems
We don't
really
know what
insane.
happens with fertility.
Right.
So that is a bigger issue. And so let's just say, okay, let's just paint the picture. You're not hungry because you feel nauseous. So you're not eating much. So you're essentially starving yourself. And then you don't have energy because you're starving yourself and you feel nauseous. So you don't have the energy to work out. I mean, just think about the like aging.
It just sounds like you're
Totally.
slowly dying.
Totally.
Honestly, that's what it sounds like.
So I feel like people have to understand this information, right? Which there isn't enough research still on it at all. So like what I would say, or what I would say to any of my friends who are on it, is just you have to know, educate yourself with all of this, and then hopefully still, if it's something that you want to do, it's like I'm not going to tell. And I think that's a big part of MAHA too. Is this whole idea of informed consent. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't want mandates on us telling us to get vaccines. I don't want the government, or I don't want the government to tell me what to do.
I don't either.
I see that.
So,
I do see that. But then my question's always like, but like a doctor isn't going to be sitting there and then reading all the black box warning to us and being like, you know what I mean? Like when we were sitting down with the doctor, she was like, well, the benefits outweigh the risks. And we kept being like, but do they? Like, do they really? And I would list off all these stats, and she'd be like, well, I can't speak on that, or I can't speak on that for kids. And that was concerning to me, because if you're a doctor, you're supposed to know more than me, but it doesn't seem like you do. Do you know? It's just things like that.
And I think that's what you're keying in on is so important. It is about individual empowerment and choice, right? Like it is our health ultimately, and well-being is on us. We can't rely on the government. We can't rely on doctors. It is a proactive choice and thing that you have to educate yourself about.
Which makes it even harder to be like, oh, we have a choice, and you go to the doctor, but the doctor doesn't tell you everything.
Yeah.
So then you have to do more research.
Always. You're like,
I know. And but you'd think, right? Because a lot of like the average American doesn't know that they need to like do extra research, because we've just been told our whole life, trust your doctor. Your doctor knows everything. But that's not even true anymore.
It's not. And we don't need another diet. We actually need a revolution. We need a revolution to make American women healthy again. But where do we start?
oh God, that's a really good question. I mean, listen, I think the work that is happening within the MAHA movement is very helpful towards that. I think a lot of these things that might be sort of well known to us, even around things like, food dyes and, getting these toxins out of our food, the fact that there is more of a mainstream awareness around that impact and that people are actually thinking about these things, I think that is definitely a step in the right direction.
I agree.
People just weren't thinking about this stuff before, or maybe they were, it just wasn't in the,
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Earlier, you were talking about how when you were growing up, it was like, oh, be small, eat salad. Well, it's interesting because when I was growing up, it's been more like be fat, be obese. It's beautiful, it's healthy.
Oh, the whole body positive. I have thoughts on this too. Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I thought it was okay. Like I genuinely believed that it was beautiful to be morbidly obese and 320 pounds. And so when I went on my phone and I was scrolling, I would just doom scroll all night. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, being fat is beautiful. Because Lizzo told me it was beautiful because Adele was fat at one point and that was glamorized and glorified. I mean, when Lizzo lost weight, everyone was very mad. When when Adele lost weight, people were mad. When Lizzo lost weight, people got mad and frustrated. And so when I would go on social media and I'd like take selfies of myself and I was so obese and I couldn't like walk up the steps, but no one online knew that. And I was depressed and I was anxious and my therapists were like, it's fine. It's totally fine to be obese. Like there's nothing wrong with you.
And don't talk about it, Mom.
And don't talk about it, Mom.
Because you're making it worse.
And so I went to the doctor.
That must have been tough.
Yeah.
And they weighed me. And the doctor, and I said, oh, I'm not really eating that much. I was lying. The doctor says, you should eat some bread, like whole wheat bread. I'm like, what? I was 320 pounds. The only time I knew something was wrong was when they took my blood. But I say this to you because it's like, if I hadn't gotten my blood taken and saw real results that my mom had to be like, hey, Penelope, those levels mean you're not healthy, I would have never gotten healthy.
And is that the thing that ultimately turned it around for you?
Well, yeah, then I had to be homeschooled, right? Because school was my ultra-processed food place. Like, I would binge eat all the ultra-processed food, like pizza, cookies, in the bathroom corner.
Oh, my God.
And I was, like, shove it because my cells were desperate. They, were not getting nutrients because I was starving myself all day, and then I was only eating junk food. So, and that was never satisfying my body. So my body was just, more and more and more. And slowly I just got so fat. But it was accepted. My friends fed me junk food, not salad. That wasn't the narrative. You know what I mean?
Wild.
And I think the story you're telling, Penelope, is a story we're hearing a lot from the women that contact us from our platform. And if that's you, definitely comment down below because I know that Penelope wasn't the only one that was experiencing this. People are so confused. Why am I eating so much food and starving all the time? And then we're seeing also the numbers. We're seeing that we are, as Americans, consuming more food than is normal. We're in more than we need. And the food companies are saying, well, we need to supply this demand. And that's why we have to use these herbicides and fungicides and pesticides and genetically modified food organisms and seeds that are genetically modified. We have to keep up with the demand. And I would get curious, and I do get curious, and I'd love for you to get curious about why are you so hungry? And I think, Penelope, you said it. My cells were starving.
Yeah. So look, this is me. This is when I was 320 pounds.
Oh, my God.
We'll put a photo up
You're
for them.
totally different
The ones
person.
who
Isn't
listen. Here, I'll show you a photo of my face, too. Oh, that's another one.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And that was my face.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's really interesting because it's just like it's not really food. It's like fake food, creating monster-like humans. And I don't have a judgment. I don't think that you're a monster if you're obese. I'm just saying that you are overtaken. Your gut microbiome is compromised, your neurology, your brain gets compromised, and you're in a kind of prison. And I don't want that for anybody.
I don't know.
And there are now, the cover of Vogue, is an obese woman. Miss Alabama is obese.
Well, that's where I'm the politics start to matter, right? Because if I'm going to be real, to me, that is a direct product of the culture of wokeness and this whole idea of body positivity that we saw, especially in places like LA, where there were these brands coming out saying it's okay to be big and we're going to have, again, what is the message that we're sending to people here,
And young girls.
And young girls, exactly.
Young girls are fatter than ever.
Yeah.
And they're consuming that media and nobody's talking about it. I'm upset about it. I'm very passionate about it because I'm I needed someone to tell me hey, this is not okay. But my friend girls, they were like, oh, you're fine. Here's an Oreo. They were out for me. Low key, they just wanted me to be fat because it's a competition thing. But I mean, yeah, so I'm very curious about.
But we did tell you were fat and you got mad.
Of course.
So we had to be courageous to stand against your anger and rage, remember?
You were the only one that would tell me I was fat because everybody else around, my teacher said I was beautiful.
Well, you were
The
beautiful,
only people
but
who didn't lie were the
you're my
boys
daughter.
in school.
Yeah.
They'd be like womp womp womp, but then I tuned them out because we had these girls, my friend girls, who were like, "You're beautiful, Penelope. Come on." They literally fed me Oreos.
No, but normalizing it is the problem, and it's like permissive parenting. It's it's only going to get you so far. It's kind of like how we've been spending money with our government. We've been spending so much money, and now there's a new chief in town, and people are mad about it because he's tightening the belt, and redirecting the money, and it's there's some growing pains also in the food industry. We don't want the food industry to go bankrupt, but we do need it to get reorganized.
There's also this movement now with this permissive ideology of how it's okay to be obese, you have nutritionists and dietitians being like, drink the Coke, eat the cake. And that's really addictive. So what I learned, was that like sugar and flour are addictive. So I've been like 4 years sober from it because I just won't. Protein, fiber, these are very important things, but you're not taught that in school. And now you have dietitians online and nutritionists being like, it's fine to have cake. That's what my therapist said. That's what my doctor said. And that's where I'm like, okay, now we have a big problem because you have certified health professionals saying it's okay to eat sugar and flour.
Well, there are two bodies of research. I don't know if you know about this. It's interesting because like the best, most famous eating disordered clinics in the country are telling people, like, people who go to the clinic and check themselves in, when there's like an integration plan after they leave. And we know somebody personally who's been through this process. So they give you a lot of medication when you're in it, right? And they try to get you stabilized. And then they try to reintroduce you to society, and they want you to go get pizza a couple times a week. They want you to get donuts and ice cream because they don't want the research shows that when you deprive, it leads to binging and purging. And so, but there's also another body of research because I have certifications in nutritional psychology in addition to my degrees. And it's really clear now. There's over 3,000 studies that show that when you eat these chemicals and these foods that are ultra processed and foods that have HPFs, highly palatable foods that have high carbohydrates, high fat, and high sugar. High fat, high sugar, high salt. So carbs, it's like this magic bliss point thing. As we've heard, like the tobacco science, they went to the food industry and it really does work. So it shifts your body and your brain into addiction. So to me, it's like, why would you set yourself up for that? If you knew better and you're setting your physiology, your neurology, and your biology up for success without eating flour and sugar. That's what OA, Overeaters Anonymous, uses as abstinence. Okay. Which is interesting, right? So you have these two bodies of research that are both really true. And it's like, what are you going to do about it? So there is this narrative, like you're saying, Penelope, with certified health professionals who are saying, you should not deprive yourself of donuts, Coca-Cola, and junk food.
Don't you think that's crazy?
Yeah, it's insane. But I feel like it just makes me think, what I'm thinking is that like we have like a spiritual crisis too of such magnitude that like, I think part of this is, to have reverence for your body, to have reverence for being on this earth, to have a purpose and to have a mission and to feel and to be connected to that, and I think obviously we have a problem in this country where people don't feel that, whether you're, a doctor or, listen, a lot of people I know are not in the best shape. I have the most compassion and empathy because I also see how in America, we have corporate work industrial complex that, tells you that the only way to be successful is to be, typing away on your computer for 10 hours a day and high stress, your cortisol spiking all day long. And that's the only way that you're going to make it. And all of that, has a negative impact on this. So like, it's so deep, the problem. And
You're right.
So, that's
You're
why
right.
I'm like, again, going back to the strength training or, my own practices is why I come back to meditation and why I'm so committed to this is because for me, it's the only way that I can come out and be strong and successful in my work and also have any kind of balance, and again, real presence and commitment to my purpose on this journey.
To me, that's real body positivity. It's taking care of your health. It's working out. It's eating healthy. It's sleeping.
Yeah.
But now this new definition of body positivity is like love yourself at any size, accept yourself at any size, which just means we throw standards out the window. We just throw everything out the window and say, if you're fat, you're fine. And I feel like that's like inconsiderate. That's like mean.
And we've been shadow banned. We've been canceled. We've been called fat phobic. We've been really
For losing weight. I'm fat phobic.
Honestly, like when you look at what we've actually done since we've decided to start on this the last couple of years, like it's shocking, like how we keep going.
Yeah.
Most people would have given up a long time ago.
Yeah. Someone said that to us a few days. Most people would have quit after a year. Now you're 4,000 videos in and you're still going.
I'm in the same boat, ladies. It's a good team.
It's a good team.
It's a good team. It's partly too, I think, why the narrative needs to shift from this idea of like fat, skinny, depriving yourself to truly strength and health. It has to be the context of health. I am doing this so that I can live a long, healthy, strong life so that when I'm 85 years old, I will still be an Energizer bunny, which, let's pray to God that's the case, and it's very different thing than thinking about, depriving yourself and I need to be skinny because that's what other people say, or obese. It's like, why are we not thinking about it in the context of what is the best thing for my health and longevity?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So.
I'm hopeful that Penelope will have children one day.
I will.
And that I get to participate in their life, because that's like one of my goals, right? Is like,
I love it. You will be
Yeah.
a mom. I want so many kids.
And so lately I've been picking up a heavier weight than I usually do. It's a 25-pound weight.
They're so cute.
And I squat down with my 25-pound weight, and then I lift it up, because I want to, when I'm 85, I want to be able to yeah, no, but that is the truth. You're preparing now for when you're my age in 10 years, and then, so you can be stronger, because it's just going to decline. Our skeletal muscle does, become a little less. So it's really important, but we're not thinking that way. And I think living in Europe for 10 years helped me to realize how short-term Americans in general think. We're thinking in 4-year terms. We're thinking very short-term. Hopefully the changes that we will initiate in this term are going to stick. I mean, who knows? It's still yet to see.
I hope so.
I hope so too, but think about all the change that just happened in the last 2 months.
It's true. I mean, I think the other thing that is so important is we need to make sure that this movement lasts beyond this administration, which I think it will because it lives in the people. And so I just think that's really important. It's it's going to be up to people like us to keep it going, or have, other politicians pick it up as their issue. I mean, I think that's something on the PAC side, that we certainly want to encourage, is supporting candidates who embody this MAHA, as a lifestyle, as a core component of their platform. So,
And Penelope actually is starting a young person's.
Oh, yeah, me and Grace Price are doing a MAHA Girls,
Cute.
and we just joined MAHA Action, officially,
Amazing.
a few days ago, and now we're doing MAHA Girls for the young girls, so they can learn how to become healthy in their dorm, or do workouts in their dorm, make healthy recipes.
It's an Insta channel that's going to also lead to a private community.
oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, private public, but
Yeah, let
yeah.
me know when it launches.
I will.
and stuff. Yeah.
We're just building our account right now, but I'm very excited about the impact we can make on young girls, because
Yeah.
I don't want young girls to be fat and obese and they're infertile. I'm afraid of that. I'm really afraid that we're going to have a bunch of really overweight young girls who can't have babies, who can't have children, and then who are given Ozempic, and then they have no skeletal muscle, and then they can't lift anything, they can't have kids, and then we just die off as a generation because we have all these unhealthy women. That's a fear. I do not want that for our girls, and I don't want girls to have to go through what I went through. So that's why when we were in Arizona helping ban ultra-processed foods from the public schools, that has to happen, in every state, because girls can't keep eating the way I did, because I had to lose 160 pounds naturally, and that's really tough, really tough, really tough. So I don't want that for them.
Yeah.
I don't want that for them either, Penelope. Big food is creating addicts.
Yep.
Big pharma is providing the medication.
Yep.
And I mean, do you think it's calculated? Are you a conspiracy theorist? Do you think, or do you think it's just kind of a phenomena? I mean, I always think it's just corporate interest, greed, money.
Yeah, what do you think?
But yeah, I'm curious what you think.
Listen, I am a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. Whoa.
So it's always
Oh, safe space. But listen, I how do I say this? Do you guys know Charles Eisenstein?
I don't think
He was a speechwriter on the Kennedy campaign, and he has the blog post Substack that I read. He's a philosopher. I just love the way he thinks. And he said in a recent blog post, he said, we have to look at all of these people, in politics, even if they're our enemy, we have to have compassion and love for them and recognize that they are our brother or our sister. And he said specifically, even in the context of if you were to meet, an executive at Bayer, I'm sure that you would get along with that person, right?
Yes.
And I really had to think about that for a second because, and it's sort of the reframe for me was let's be united in our goal and not focused on our enemy, if that makes sense, because again, I don't think that is all of, is everyone who works at Bayer Monsanto evil?
Absolutely not.
No, but are they in this just long, tailwind of almost a psychosis of having to make more money and do they have this level of awareness and impact? Like they just don't. So I have compassion for them. I don't think they're evil. I think unfortunately they're, in this place where they have been told that this is okay and it's crazy to hear them justify it. Actually, Vani Hari did a segment on News Nation the other day talking about this issue specifically, and a Bayer Monsanto executive got on and said like glyphosate is safe and the EPA has right, and it's like she believes that, and so when you say I don't think they're evil. I do think they're corrupt. I think the incentives are wrong, and I think that the government doesn't at this point support correcting those incentives. I think that's a lot of what Bobby Kennedy and this movement is about, correcting how misaligned these government agencies are, the way the EPA and the FDA and all of these people are actually in bed with these companies. That's why the EPA rules glyphosate as safe, is because the studies that they're doing are conducted by people and paid for by people from Bayer.
Yeah.
So,
which is, I think, a Swiss company.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't think they're inherently evil. I think the incentives are just completely wrong. And we live in a capitalistic culture. And I do feel like in some ways, I don't know how to say, I feel like people are kind of brainwashed to a certain extent. And I think that our job is to raise awareness and to fix it, through government, through culture, through raising the collective consciousness around this stuff. So
media projects.
Yeah.
I do believe Americans need to be entertained.
Yeah.
And we've been glorifying gluttony for far too long. When you think about all the food shows. I mean, I was on MasterChef. We were glorifying gluttony. I was trying to get together a health message when I got back from Europe in 2015. I'm watching TV shows. My dad loves to watch food shows. When I'm visiting him, with Diners, Drives, and whatever that show is, why isn't that like going around to health food stores or, healthy restaurants and finding out the secrets and how they make healthy food taste great? We could make a master chef and I'm saying these ideas because like, if you want to fund one of these ideas, like we need to entertain Americans.
I'm down.
Americans need to be entertained. But we need to be glorifying health and making it fun and interesting. And we need to work on edutainment and really just tantalizing the American public with the idea that they can be free. To me, freedom is a base American desire, a human desire, but especially in this country, right? The ego. And so if we want to be free, the bondage of sickness, as Kennedy always says, a well person has a million dreams, but a sick person only has one, and that is to get better.
100%.
And so if we want to reinstill the true freedom and patriotism of America, it's got to be to get healthy again as a top priority. But, we're on the front lines interfacing with the public every day. And sometimes to tell the truth is confronting. Like Penelope put out this video today that actually one of our members reposted in our group.
Oh my gosh.
And we were like, oh, we're bracing ourselves. Like what she, I don't agree with everything she said in this video, but yeah, no, I don't think it's as simple.
It was very honest. It was just honest.
I know, but there's one thing I disagreed with. But the point is like,
what was it? What would you disagree with?
Well, I don't think it's just as simple as exercising and nutrition. I think the emotional regulation piece is so key. And I think it's a little bit more nuanced and layered. But you have your experience, and you've lost 160 pounds. I have my experience. I've lost 100 pounds, and I've helped thousands of people to reverse their chronic disease. And so we just have different experiences and perspectives, and that's okay.
We both help the girls in our group lose weight.
Totally. Penelope with her gutless guru, like Iron Fist, and me with my let's dive into the depths.
Balance. I say it's a good balance.
And at the end of the day, what we talked about earlier in this interview was really about confronting the difficulty. Like when you are lifting weights, you reach a moment where you're out, like you don't have power. And it's kind of interesting when you reach that edge, because you were like, wow, I want to do one more rep. Should I do it? If I do it, am I going to injure myself? If I don't do it, am I going to build muscle? Or why can't I do it today when I could do it yesterday? And like, that's why you were saying this cascade of things. Like, did I sleep enough? Did I get enough protein and all these things? Because you can see really clearly when you're weight training, like what's going on.
Yep.
Especially stress levels. We haven't even talked about stress.
Oh God, yeah, that's a big one. And I think just going back to your point about the edutainment too, is like, I think this stuff can't, like, listen, looking and feeling your best, you guys, is amazing.
Yeah.
Like that is the most
Amazing.
fun thing that you could bring to your life in terms of having joy and vibrancy and energy and so to me, I think, I hear various people that are a part of MAHA, we all talk about this. I think many of us want to bring that vitality to the rest of the country, the world, because we understand how, and that empowers us to do our best and to again, to bring our purpose out in the world. And so like you guys, it's amazing,
It's
So
amazing.
I'm
My
like,
face hurts. I'm smiling so much. Like, it's
it's
amazing.
amazing. So it's like, and I don't want to be too intimidating about it at all either. But I think if you start with these shifts around thinking about it in the context of being strong and, living a long life, like that's what it's about. It doesn't need to be strength training 4 times a week. Although once you hit my age, I think you should. I do. Like
agree with
that's
that
what the
statement.
science says. I listen to a lot of people. I just listened to an interview with Mark Hyman, and someone said, what's the most impactful thing you've done for your health? And he said, weight training, which he started, I guess, at 59 or whatever. So, but there are so many ways to make this fun and accessible.
What do you say to because there's a lot of women and anyone that are really overweight and they are not even in the mindset of exercising could be possible. They're not even like, they can't even get out of bed. Like, how do they even think about what we're saying, right? Because we feel amazing right now. We love the way we feel. We know that. But for them, it's like, that seems like such a far hill to climb. That seems like it's never going to happen for them. And also, some of them are in that victim mindset where they're like, no, being fat's beautiful. So, like, what do we, I'm curious what your take is on how we help them.
Well, I'm sure having them talk to people like you would be really impactful, given your journey with this, to say that you can do it naturally and at your age, kind of everything that you've gone through. I think you have to show them people who came out on the other side and did it. I think that's really the only way. It'd be very different for me to sit there and say, again, it's like we want to give them the tools, right, and the education, and then hopefully help motivate and inspire them to do this, which hopefully this movement can do.
Yeah, I think a lot of them feel alone.
Yeah.
Especially when they go to the doctor. What kind of support do they actually have? And I really don't think that you're meant to do it alone. And that's why the most successful behavioral change modification models before Weight Watchers was changed their direction with weight loss medication was Weight Watchers and the Overeaters Anonymous, that whole lineage. And I think one of the core components when I analyzed it for another behavioral change for cognitive decline, a project I did about 12 years ago, showed that it was about the community support. And and Mark Hyman even spoke about it in front of the health committee, I think it was last year in September. The community piece is so key. We're not meant to do this alone.
100%.
Because we think we're alone. We think we are the only one that has to climb that hill and that we have to figure it out. And what I'm so present to is this radical act that Penelope and I and you are standing for of actually making your own food, getting back in the kitchen, sourcing good ingredients that are nutrient dense and whatnot. Like that is a really big first step for people outside of the first step is really just drinking enough water. But the second step we notice is that people just actually don't know how to cook food anymore. I mean, who taught you how to cook?
My mom taught me how to cook. And then, more recently, I just play on my own, again, given what I need for my physical needs. But it's true. I mean, I think Vani and I were talking about this the other day. She said, sharing this story about how when she was traveling with Truvani on the road, she actually traveled with her kids because that was part of the deal. It was like, that was the non-negotiable. And she said, she shared the story about how she used to get frustrated because she wouldn't have enough space to cut up the vegetables for her kids. But she said, that was a revolutionary act. Her reframe was to take the time to cut real vegetables and whole foods for your kids while you're traveling on the road is a revolutionary act. And I think we think of these small things, being in the kitchen, making your own food, making sure you have a colorful, vibrant plate with everything you need on it. Like it is radical, revolutionary, and it's really beautiful. I think, again, it's simple, right? Like going back to that idea. So
a lot of the women listening to our podcast are struggling and they don't believe they can do it.
Yeah.
There's this kind of hopelessness that is so prevalent and they feel like they've tried everything and nothing has worked. A lot of them have major like endocrine disruption. They're in their hormone system. And, Penelope had anxiety. She had depression.
PCOS.
She had PCOS, which is
reversed naturally.
Wow.
and
Which
she had
they say is not possible.
sleep apnea, and she had all of these problems that they say, well, you can't lose weight if you're not sleeping well. You can't lose weight if you have PCOS. Well, if you're depressed, we're going to put you on an antidepressant
It might make you
medication.
gain weight.
It might make you gain
Yeah.
weight. So it's just interesting because there's to snap out of it. I mean, you almost you have to really have a lot of fire. And what would you say is a way to get Americans reinstilled with hope?
Wow, beautiful. I mean, I think like going back to this point of sort of spiritual connectivity, I think going outside, connecting to nature, I think recognizing that you aren't alone. We are a part of this big, beautiful, earth, nature, universe. I think there has to be a sense of connectivity beyond yourself. However you can get there, whether it's, trying like a free meditation online, or again, just going for a walk outside, seeing the ocean. I mean, I think nature is a good place to start.
I totally agree. That's why we included actually a 30-day meditation course in our program because not only, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There are a lot of people out there who don't have that connection, or who had it, maybe lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like I said, when I was in New York and I was in this big corporate rat race and making all this money and drinking every weekend, and I don't know that I was present to it until it got so bad for me that I knew intuitively that I had to pull myself out,
so smart.
by coming to LA.
What was your rock bottom?
My rock bottom was probably when the stuff happened with my CEO, where I just, I kind of had just completely lost myself. And, and that's a whole nother topic in terms of like Me Too stuff. But I just knew that like this was not healthy for me and I needed a change. And, it was going to be okay leaving my corporate job and doing something more entrepreneurial at the time that actually led me to learn about all different, health and wellness and spirituality modalities. And that way I was really lucky that I was able to, transition to, at the time, Summit Series and live out on a mountain in Utah and, have breath work and yoga. I mean, I realized that that's very, I'm very, very grateful for that experience. But yeah, and meditation is a big thing too. I mean, I'm trained in Vedic. I think I've talked to a lot of people about this, taking that 10, 20 minutes to just recenter, connect to something else, whether it's your purpose, whether it's just to envision how your day is going to go. That work is so powerful. And again, that's like free, right? Like anyone can get that. You can Google like a Tony Robbins meditation and just start to take the time to do it, because, put the work in and the results, you will start to get them.
So true. I tried that, didn't I, Penelope? We were in Hawaii
Oh my gosh.
and we were whale watching.
Yeah.
I was so addicted to my phone, and I had to be without it because we were in the ocean, and I tipped the boat that we were in. We were in like a little canoe in the middle of the ocean, these massive whales like all around me, and I fall off the boat.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm 320 pounds, and it's really embarrassing. But then, we got back on, and we were with the whales, and I had that kind of like God moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's quiet. I can hear the whales in the ocean, and everything's okay. And these mountains, and they're real. This is real, not my phone. And so I think the phone plays a really big role.
Well, and that's a big thing, it's always too like, this is part of what I play with, and I'm a big fan of Kabbalah, like Jewish sort of mysticism, spirituality. And I think another thing we always have said through the campaign and through MAHA, Del says this all the time, I believe it. It's funny, I was like saying this before Del and Bobby were saying it, but it's like you just focus on doing the next right thing, and that's the point you're saying about presence. And I think that when we get into our head and we start to project about the future and, this weight loss journey is going to be so hard, or even for me, like, what are my goals? How do I want to look? It's like, No, just do the next right thing, right? To take care of yourself. Instead of reaching for the ultra processed chips, just try to like make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know, and do not trip yourself up about that stuff because
Or
that's
roast some
hell.
vegetables and like till they
Yeah.
taste like chips or chickpeas.
That's actually how I did it. I would eat Burger King every day, and I just made my Burger King order at home. And then each week I stepped it up. That's what I call it, step it up. But each week I just stepped it up. One like
Lettuce bun.
Ezekiel bun, you know,
Right.
then lettuce, and then beef. Then I did turkey. Then I did venison. You know, all these great things. But no one taught me except for you. You were my helper. But I'm just saying, like, it can be that simple.
Yeah, well, and it's the incremental steps, right? The incremental changes that add up to the big, you know, quote unquote result. And part of, you know, my personal journey right now is just, you know, learning to enjoy the journey truly, you know, in a way where that build is as enjoyable as you know, whatever the payoff is going to be. So
That is a big challenge in itself. I know how that is.
What do you think the MAHA movement needs the most in order to fulfill its mission, the you know, its purpose? If the purpose is achieved one day, imagine that. What do you think it needs the most?
I think that we need to continue to do what we're doing in terms of really amplifying and empowering the people that are part of this movement. For me, I really see that as integral to this work. You know, we were talking, I think, this week about, you know, how do we empower and activate all the different MAHA moms that are across the country, you know, so that when there's stuff going on in Georgia or wherever about the glyphosate legislation, like we can be like, okay, we have this army and we can sort of
Deploy them.
Yeah, and take the magic of, you know, the support for Bobby and really, you know, I mean, that his confirmation in some ways was totally unprecedented, right? Like that was people powered, you know, the overwhelming amount of calls. You know, you had senators saying they had never received that many calls to a Senate office before. And I mean, the opposition was real, you guys, as you know, it's like pharmaceutical industry. I mean, that was very intense, you know, and to me, that just shows me the power of this movement. I'm like, well, if we did that, like we can do anything, you know? So I think the answer is like, you know, I think refining this and creating this model where, you know, we can go out there and advocate and champion the legislation and the policies that we want, much like you guys did in Arizona. You know, it's really integral to this. And the more people that catch on, you know, I'm sure you guys have had this experience too, where it's like you just have one conversation with someone about this, and like most people cannot get mad about the idea of cleaning up our food and getting rid of poison, you know, and so every single one of those conversations makes a huge difference. And I really like, you know, Del always says this too, where I can't remember what I was saying the other day. I said, well, Bobby might do this, and he said, like, we're never going to fully rely on the government. You know, like that's the beauty of this movement, again, is that we can work in concert alongside the government, but this sort of cultural pressure, and in some ways, you know, people can move faster than the government. And so we need to be empowered with that truth and that knowledge. You know, someone said the other day, should we do a protest in Georgia? You know, people don't think it's going to work. Kemp is for this bill. I said, who cares? It's just about the demonstration so that they can see this is who this movement is. This is who, you know, the government legislators are accountable to. And we'll do this in every state if that's what, you know, if that's what it warrants.
I love it. Yeah. And I feel very strongly about moms learning how to cook, because there's no mistake that the kids are going to find junk food if the moms don't learn how to cook. So I agree. Moms have so much power.
So much power.
It's unreal. They're responsible for spending most of the money in the country.
Yep.
So they're driving the GPD.
Yep.
And, you know, what are they buying? And so I saw it with the genetic modification, the GMO movement. It was fascinating. And their demand drove Cheerios and a lot of big food companies to have that GMO-free label or non-GMO on their box. And so I think it could be, you know, something similar, you know, in terms of whatever we do with regenerative ag or nutrient density and or just learning how to cook.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so powerful to have, because Penelope said, like, Mom, if I knew it was going to be this tasty, I would have done this a long time ago.
So true.
But she just didn't trust it, you know, and the architecture of hunger and taste buds is a whole nother body of science and depth. But, you know, it's really important. Luckily, I had parents who loved to cook, but they didn't know how to cook healthy. I mean, I had to really teach myself that. and it is an art and a science, and it does impact your psychology.
Yeah.
It does impact your family health. And Penelope was diagnosed with ADHD. And, lifting weights is a great way to help yourself with ADHD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because all that frenetic energy, you actually have to grip, and it actually brings your focus in.
Oh, interesting.
It's very, very helpful. And no one really talks about that. Essential fatty acids, so key. Don't eat chemicals in your food because they actually cause behavioral disorders. That is proven now by science. Don't eat their ultra-processed foods that's packed full of those chemicals. Don't eat the sugar. Like you were saying, Penelope, your friends were fed the sugar with the medicine. And then you're like, where did my friends go? They all kind of left after lunch. They're like a shell of themselves.
Yeah, it was so weird being the only kid who was like out there, like, energetic and happy and smiling. But I was the weird one because everyone else was drugged.
Where was this when you're talking about?
The drugs?
Well, yeah, and just growing up where people were.
Maryland.
And
Florida.
Okay.
And California.
And California.
All three, yeah.
Interesting.
Even in California, in Marin, out of all places, you would think. But Marin, the teenagers are snorting cocaine in the bathrooms. They're all high on something. They're all on Xanax, Molly, Percocet. I remember I was in like three times a week therapy because I was like suicidal. I was gonna it was really bad. I was self-harming, and everyone in my school was doing it too. So it was like we would all do it together. And these girls were so lonely, even though they had everything. So they had all the money, they had all the access, and they were eating the crap food, even though you're in like one of the healthiest places with organic food at their fingertips.
One of the reasons I moved there was for the food culture, yeah.
Fed pizza at school. Every Friday there's pizza. Every Monday there was burgers.
Pizza could be a health food, although, by the way.
Could be,
Yeah.
but it wasn't.
That
was all we got. And like maybe an apple, but it was like juice, Coke, whatever. And it's just like the vending machines were full of crap. And you're in Marin of all places. So you think even, in California you'd be good, but you're not.
There has been some pushback saying that MAHA is like this movement for rich white moms.
Yeah.
And, there are a lot of rich white moms who are in the MAHA movement, and and I get that.
Yeah.
But
I get it too.
yeah, and there are big issues. Like we know the head of LAUSD, and she talks about how she puts over 500,000 lunches on a school tray every day, 5 days a week, and the struggle she has with supply chain, the struggle she has. It's over 70,000 of those lunches are for homeless children, and it's the only source of nutrition they get. And as much as she wants to use organic strawberries, half the batch is gone bad by the time she puts it on the tray. So that's a huge waste. And there are other issues too, where half of her budget, or more than half of her budget for each school lunch goes to like red tape, insurance, unions, so on and so forth. There's all these things, so I get that there's a larger context, but I don't believe that money or race or creed should be a barrier to health. And in fact, when you look at some of these poverty level problems that we have with health, because they're actually the largest demographic in this country that's suffering with heart disease, diabetes, and many of them are not insured. And so there's even a bigger call to action for those communities in terms of, going back to their traditional ways of living. It's not expensive actually to eat beans and rice and potatoes and cabbage, but whole foods. So I just want to call that out as a sort, like there's awareness there, even in this conversation talking about Marin and the rich kids. It's real, and I know that we're thinking about it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think about this all the time too. It's like, how do we make it more accessible? I mean, it doesn't matter how much money I make. It's like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this in a way that's like economical, and like, what are the moves that you can do to make this more accessible and affordable? I go to the farmer's market and you get the beautiful, two batches of like beautiful greens and radishes for $5, and I'm like, this is amazing, score. And so of course we have to be thinking about that. And what is I'm so curious about your friend, like what is the thing that she needs the most, you think, or what would be the most impactful in helping to?
Well, I think using that budget, which is a bigger animal, but using that budget for more of the actual food that lands on the tray.
Yeah.
So if she's working with $1.75 per lunch, when she's actually given over, I think somewhere between $6 and $7 for the lunch. I mean, if that $1.75 could at least go to like $5 per lunch, she would have a lot to work with in terms of giving higher quality food, to her, and there's also the kitchen transformations. These are not kitchens at schools. These are reheating for frozen food. They're not designed as kitchens. So you've got to work with the infrastructure of what it costs to change kitchens. Those are federal
Yeah.
and state level decisions that need to be made for a restructuring of how they can appropriate funds that are given for the actual school lunch. And this is a very real problem. And I'm sure she has it worked out. So maybe we should get her on and we can just chat about it and
Yeah,
hash
I'd
it
love
out.
to chat with her. Yeah.
Because it's really, she knows.
Yeah.
And she works very closely with the superintendent. So anyway, yeah, there's problems that need to be solved. And luckily, I gave you your lunch. You chose to throw it in the trash. And, no, I mean, it's just, no.
Yeah, you gave me sunflower sprouts. I tried to give them to my friends. They were like, we do not want to eat grass. And I was like, oh, well.
And at the same time, she's also telling her friend Pierce that he's going to die because all he eats is Snicker bars and Twixes.
I know. And then his mom called you and was like, your daughter said, my son doesn't want Snickers anymore, which is a good thing. But she also said he was going to die if he kept eating them. So now I'm just confused but happy.
It was a funny phenomenon.
That's amazing.
So it was
kind of worked.
It was getting in her, even though she was rebelling against it. So I don't think it matters where you are in the United States.
Yeah.
Obesity is a rising issue, and it's scary for our future of our country. And so I'm really hopeful that in this term and beyond, we're able to turn it around and empower moms to get back around the table, get back in the kitchen, not as an act against feminism,
Yeah.
but as an act for. I mean, where we were in Switzerland, the kids still came home for lunch.
Oh, beautiful.
And we took naps in the sun, and
Yeah.
we played in the sun, and we weren't in a box all day. That was weird. And we slept on the ground, on mats.
Yeah.
And they gave us raw milk, and it was just so normal. And we
Amazing.
didn't eat crap ever. It was just amazing.
There are places in the world
Yeah.
that we can learn from.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And we're a great country.
We are. We absolutely are. Yeah.
So I'm hopeful.
Me too. I'm very excited.
Is there other stuff you want to talk about that you want to share with us and the audience that's listening?
Oh gosh, I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm good. Is there anything you guys feel like we didn't?
I'd love to hear, from your heart
Yeah.
to our audience's heart, what your hope is for them.
My hope is that you all can understand, again, start to think about this reframe of health in the context of it being really good for your mental, physical, spiritual health and longevity, and stop thinking about, what society is telling you you're supposed to look like. And this whole fat skinny game, start to think about it in the context of what is truly going to be good for my long lasting health, and see how that might change things.
Amazing. Is there any way they should get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we have our Instagram handle is MAHA Action. So we are posting podcasts and events and, rallies all the time, petitions, ways to get involved. That's really a source of, education and advocacy around all of this stuff. So give us a follow there. You can give me a follow too at MOY Post. And, again, I'm always posting about this stuff as well with all the various different folks and incredible leaders that are part of this movement. So
As a press secretary, I do have a question.
Yeah.
As a press secretary, you're responsible for the narrative.
yes.
Yeah, so the messaging, is that right? And then making sure that, doing your best, that is, to make sure that the initiatives of the movement are being positioned as close to the front and center as they possibly can be. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And ensuring, I think for us, it's getting that narrative out there around this. I feel like we had to kind of fight for a while where, for example, the mainstream media was pretty tough on the Kennedy campaign. And then obviously we've seen sort of this total shift. Now, we had mainstream media was telling me when we were starting out, around when Trump got elected and around inauguration, they were saying, MAHA is the most interesting thing to happen in Washington, MAHA and Kennedy and this whole dynamic. And so to me, what's also so important about, media and storytelling is that it is a they hope that what people read in the New York Times, they that really starts to penetrate, and there is an opportunity. You know, we don't see, our team does not see, you know, the mainstream media as an enemy at all. I think we see it as an opportunity to educate and bring awareness to these issues the best they can, right? You know, again, I don't expect, you know, the writer at the Wall Street Journal to be strength training. That's not what I'm saying, but I do, you know, there is power in that storytelling and carrying that message through. So I think for us, that's a really important part of this whole movement. So
Yeah, I love seeing that health is part of the nightly news and
Yeah.
daily news and, you know, in the news. It's just like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I've been talking about this stuff for over 30 years. It's finally like my
Exactly.
dad's calling me. He's like, oh, you told me this a long time ago, you know?
It's
like,
so cool, right?
it's
You're
fun.
like,
It
yeah.
is. And then,
Yeah.
you know, and then of course their skepticism comes in too. And
Yeah.
they're like, you know, well, what depends on how he handles this measles outbreak, you know, and it's just, it's really interesting just to see everyone reconciling this truth that they know, like you were imploring us and our listeners to really connect to and align to without the static of the external world. And that is so important. So we really thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you guys.
And thank you for getting this narrative out. And thank you for like moving the chess pieces around the board and having the vision, you know, to be able to know where it's time to say what and when, because that's all really key, isn't it? Like striking while the iron's hot and knowing when to say what and how and hoping that it'll land.
Yeah, it's true. And also, I mean, you're very kind. Thank you for all that. And also, I'm so lucky that we have truly like the most amazing team. And Del and Bridget are amazing. And, you know, Del particularly has a way with words. And so it's fun. It's like, you know, this is not like corporate PR of 10 years ago for me. I do think I think actually what is so resonant about this movement is it is heart-led, you know, it's real, you know. Going back to the confirmation process, you know, there were like fake AstroTurf letters coming out saying all these people are against Kennedy and whatever. And we're like, that's not real. Like, I think what people feel and connect to in this movement is that like, this is heart-led. This is, you know, this is our truth, and it awakens that in other people. And so, you know, that's what we get to do. It's
Amazing.
beautiful. Yeah.
Amazing. Shift the narrative. Like getting healthy is not at all a negative ever in any way, shape, or form, because suffering is the furthest away from what we're meant to do as humans.
100%.
Yeah. Well, we're really grateful that you joined us today.
Thank you guys. That was so fun.
I feel like we could talk about any one of the things we talked about for an entire hour.
I know. I agree. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot more to delve into. Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do a part 2
Yeah.
or 3 or 4
I love it.
or a panel. Yeah. So if you liked this, please do comment down below if you have questions. Like the MAHA Action Instagram, go to Emma's Instagram, see what she's sharing. She has all kinds of like fun stuff on there and helpful things as well. So you can throw your hat into the ring to make America healthy again, starting with you, because I believe the future physician is you, taking full accountability and responsibility for your health. So we love to hear from you. We love to initiate a conversation, engage in the conversation. We listen to you, we respond to you, and share this podcast if you think someone you know would benefit from it. And don't forget to subscribe. Many of you are subscribed now. Thank you. It's over 70%. So that's a great number.
Nice.
We went from like over 90 now. Thank you. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do us a solid, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you all the time. Hey, we noticed that 79.2% of you are not subscribed, which means you're watching our videos, you like the content, but you haven't made the commitment. So we would love it if you would subscribe.
And if you want to join our Women's Accountability Group, don't forget to click the link in the description to join. We're only accepting amazing, awesome, and ready women, so please join if you're one of those. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we will see you all the time.